Hello and welcome to my play presentation on The Miser by Moliere. Some playwright information. Moliere was born Jean-Baptiste Poquelin on January 15th, 1622. He was a French actor slash playwright, and his mom died when he was only 10. And his father was a royal furnisher and was able to afford a good education for Jean-Baptiste and expected Jean-Baptiste to follow in his footsteps as a royal furnisher. But Jean-Baptiste was like, nah, forget that. I'm going to be in the theater, much to his father's disapproval. Um, and so his stage name, Moliere, first documented on June 28th, 1644. And he was considered so controversial at the time that like both secular and sacred authorities would pursue his downfall. And in 1645, he was imprisoned twice for property debts. And I kind of wonder if that was like because he was so controversial and people were like after him. But he died at the age of 51 in Paris on February 17th, 1673. This play was first performed on September 9th in 1668, and the plot is there's this man named Harpagon who's this like he's the titular miser. He's this old man. He's over 60 years old. He's wealthy, and he has like two kids, and he's a widower. And his daughter is named Elise, and she is betrothed to this older, wealthy friend of Harpagon's named Anselm. But Elise is in love with this poor guy named Valier, and Valier is a steward. He gets a job as a steward in Harpagon's estate, and Harpagon's suspicious of Valier because he's afraid he's going to steal his money because he's poor. And Harpagon doesn't know that Elise and Valier are like lovers. Harpagon has a son named Cleante, I think is how you say it. And Cleante is in love with Marianne, who is Harpagon's young fiance. And Cleante is kind of tricked by a cook named Jacques. Harpagon and Cleante are kind of like mad at each other because they both like the same woman. Excuse me, sorry. And Jacques is like, hey, he like goes to each of them and like talks to each of them, and then like lies and tells Harpagon that Cleante is like, no, you can go ahead and marry Marianne. But he goes to Cleante and tells Cleante that Harpagon says Cleante has his blessing to marry Marianne. So Cleante is like, great, I'm going to go get a loan so I can have money so I can marry my crush or my betrothed, I guess. And so then there's this other servant named La Flèche who steals Harpagon's box of money. And so Harpagon notices that it's gone, and Jacques, the cook, he's the kind of like comic relief guy, he tells Harpagon that it was Valier, like just kind of like for no reason. And so Harpagon is already suspicious of him, so he's like, aha, like it was you who stole my box of money. I'm going to call the police. So he calls the police. The police show up, and also Anselm shows up, and Harpagon is like telling everybody what happened, and Harpagon accuses Valier of stealing something precious of him or to him, and Valier misunderstands what he's talking about, and he doesn't realize he's talking about his money. He thinks he's talking about Elise. So Valier confesses that he and Elise are secretly engaged, and Anselm is like, cool, good for them. And Harpagon's like, oh no. And then Cleante shows up with Harpagon's box of money, and he's got a gun, and he's like, I'm holding your box of money hostage until you let me marry Marianne. And Harpagon's like, fine, I don't care, just give me my money back. So he gives him his money back, and then Harpagon is like content with his money, and Anselm realizes he's like talking with Valier and Marianne, and he realizes that Valier and Marianne are both his son and his daughter, and he like lost them, and there was like a shipwreck, and they like were separated. All three of them were separated, and now they've all come together, and so they're brother and sister, and so like there's gonna be two weddings between Elise and Valier, and Marianne and Cleante And Harpagon is like, okay, well, I'm not paying for the wedding because he loves money. And Ansel was like, I will gladly pay for the weddings. And that's the end of the show. Excuse me. And so my cast is Harpagon. I have Kurt Russell because he's kind of like in the 80s. He's kind of like a tough guy. And now he's older, and I feel like I can see him being kind of like a cynical, like kind of smart aleck old man who only loves his money. In Cleante, I have Dan Stevens because he's a handsome gentleman. He's like 37, but he can play younger. And he was the Beast in Beauty and the Beast. And I can kind of see him being kind of temperamental and like a little spoiled and wanting to get this girl to marry him, even though Marianne loves him. And then Elise, the daughter, I have Lily James because she's cute and she's got this kind of like, I don't know, kind of like a Juliet quality about her. And Elise and Valier are kind of like Romeo and Juliet, but they're like secretly lovers. Valier I have as Cole Sprouse because he's kind of he plays Jughead on Riverdale, and he's kind of that's a character that's kind of similar to Valier, where he's like kind of looked down upon because he's poor. And so the wealthy don't want their daughters around him or to marry him. And so for Marianne, I have Rose Leslie because she's in Game of Thrones. She plays Ygritte, and she's like feisty. And I think she'd be a good like opposite of Dan Stevens, and playing a romantic like lead like that. And for Anselm, I have Val Kilmer because he's like when he was younger, he was kind of a hothead, I guess, but now he's older. He seems kind of like more jovial and like fatherly and like caring, and I can see him being like, "Yay! Like, there's gonna be a wedding. I'll pay for that wedding." LaFleche, I have Michael Pena because he's a comedic actor, and I can see him kind of being like sneaking away with like things like a thief. He played a thief in Ant-Man, so maybe that's why. And Jock, the cook, I have Paul Rudd because Paul Rudd, he seems to be a bit of a prankster, like in interviews, and he's a comedic actor, and he can handle that comedic character very well. So, and I love Paul Rudd, so I always throw him in there. The themes are family, money, class struggles, love, and greed. I feel like that's kind of they all intermingle very well within the show. Some interesting facts. This play is loosely based on Plautus's Aurelaria, I guess is how you say that. Well, I'm not much of a, I guess, I don't know what language it is. And this play was produced when Moliere's company was under the protection of Louis XIV because, again, people were like after him because he was controversial at the time. And that's my play presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.